Hello there, and welcome to Nowhere to Hide. I'm Brian Hyde. Today we're going to talk a little bit about pride. And yes, I understand it's Pride Month and it's a play on the words, but wouldn't it be nice to make Idaho something that we could be proud of as opposed to just being prideful? And I'm going to talk in particular about why is it that so many municipalities in Idaho and even in places beyond that would be very unlikely to buy into the pride agenda, nonetheless seem to be doing so. We'll explore some of the reasons why in just a few moments.
All reporters are biased, the Idaho Press Club are biased, all media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Well, Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot. That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
dark money is influencing policy in our state.
Well, that's not how this works.
Once again, welcome to Nowhere to Hide. You know, it seems like the tide may be turning, and I don't mean there's a wholesale rejection of, rainbow events. It's not so much that as a public that seems to be getting a little bit tired of having a politicized and sadly a very sexualized agenda pushed on them, and more importantly, pushed on their children. And it appears people are starting to say no. But isn't it strange how corporate America, for the most part, still seems to be buying into the whole, we've got to do this, we've got to, put the rainbow colors in our logo and make sure that everybody knows, we're woke. Well, a lot of people are tired of it. But let's look at some of the different municipalities that have started picking this up. Nampa's city leadership rolling out the red carpet. It's hard to see, but there's the pride flag. I think this one covers just about everything, talking about an event coming up a little bit later on this month. This is courtesy of Senator Brian Lenny. Of course, Boise has been in the news a lot. May 6th, they voted as a city council to make the pride flag the official city flag. And then 22 days later, on May 28th, if you recall, we announced this in a previous episode, the Pride season kickoff, which was supposed to take place, I believe, tomorrow, actually was officially canceled due to low attendance. Now, for an event that hadn't happened yet, it's kind of interesting to say, well, we just don't have enough people participating, but maybe they're going off of ticket sales or something, but they felt like there wasn't enough engagement to make it worthwhile. And we get this excuse of we didn't have enough people to responsibly hold the event. What exactly does that mean? I don't know. We'll have to figure it out. But obviously, the Boise City Council has pushed hard. And again, have you noticed that the people pushing back, it's not because of violent action. Oh, they're just, tearing down every pride flag that they see. It's just people are stepping back from it. St. Luke's is stepping back from it. However, look at this. In the nearby state of Montana, this is Missoula. Their city council also voted to approve a resolution making the pride flag an official flag so that they have the same excuse that Boise has. Well, it's an official flag, and therefore we should be flying it. And the question I'm trying to get at is just simply this. Why is it important for any entity of government at any level, municipal, county, state, federal, to be pushing this particular agenda? I mean, I would love to get the take of those who seem to think that it's so imperative, it has to be there. We have to make sure everybody feels welcome, because that's not true as far as how welcome everyone is made to feel. I'll give you some pretty solid examples of this here in just a moment. Nonetheless, what brings people to Idaho is the idea that there are some things that are still based in tradition. And frankly, if we're trying to normalize things through whether it's pride flags or whether it's, LGBT themed things finding their way into the classrooms, which indeed is happening here in Idaho as well as just about everywhere else, you have to wonder, why is it being done? And I think this is a pretty simple explanation as far as, look, if something needs to be normalized, whatever is happening in the name of, progress or equality or pride or whatever it is, if it's something that has to be normalized, well, we can start with the assumption it ain't normal, at least not starting out. Then there's the aspect of, can we still laugh at ourselves a little bit and have fun? The Old State Saloon is putting this to the test with their declaration of Heterosexual Awesomeness Month. Now, some people take umbrage to this and why would they do something like that? That's such a hateful thing to do. How so? It's tongue in cheek. I mean, look, you don't have to look too far to find some symbol of pride on display, whether it's corporate or whether it's just, another festival, a parade or whatever. There are plenty of observances that make it very clear that whatever the LGBT plus community is, it's not a marginalized, barely visible minority that nobody ever, could dare speak of. I mean, they have as much protection from the media, from academia, from corporate America, and even from government as any particular group of people could have. Why is that a problem? Because it kind of flies in the face of the idea of equality before the law. So when someone has a sense of humor, like Mark from the Old State Saloon, I have to laugh at it. I mean, come on, beer for Breeders Monday, one for for Tuesday, Teton Tuesday, Duo Deal Wednesdays, and so forth. I know they've got a special event coming up the 20th and 21st, and I just encourage you, still keep that sense of humor, because it seems like, the woke, if there's one thing that just is the hallmark of their dealings, it's nothing is funny, nothing can be laughed at. Anyway, and this is an interesting insight into the corporate side of things too. Apparently, Heterosexual Awesomeness Inc., they have their own X account now. They approached Albertsons, Fred Meyer's, Micron, and Target and asked them to sponsor the Family Values Festival that they're doing. Now, what do? They ignored it. I mean, they're lucky they didn't get a cease and desist or something. I mean, why is pride a yes and traditional family no? And that really is the question here before us. One of the things that has brought people to the state of Idaho in droves over the past few years was this yearning for normalcy. Now, when I talk about normalcy, I'm just talking about straightforward things that most of us grew up with and took for granted. There are boys and there are girls and there are moms and there are dads. Families consist of moms and dads and the kids that they raise. And, granted, it wasn't a perfect world. We all know people who were, children of divorce and so forth. But there was no going out of our way to celebrate every possible kink and deviancy and every possible basically vice, and then try to promote it to kids. In fact, that one of the reasons why a lot of people come here is because they're trying to flee states like Washington and Colorado that will actually actively drive a legal wedge between parents and their children when it comes to this topic. In Colorado, for instance, if you fail to affirm your child's gender dysphoria, the state can step in and take that child from parents. I believe Washington State is doing something very similar. Can you blame people for wanting to go to a place where it's common sense still? I think life is pretty first world here in the state of Idaho. It's not like we're living in the sticks and having to cook over open fires every day and wash our clothes on a rock down by the river. It's a wonderful community, and one of the things that makes it wonderful is there's still a sense that freedom is in fashion, and traditional family is also fashionable. And yet it seems like there are forces relentlessly trying to change that. And you're seeing them, of course, on display in all of their glory during this particular time of year. Now, having said that, there are some things we should be proud of. And I have to give high marks to the Idaho Freedom Foundation for offering something. Instead of here's what we're against, they're offering, how about here's what we're for: Pride in America, featuring different American heroes, which incidentally, the woke still, they were from a generation where the white man held all the power and blah, blah, blah. So seeing everything through a woke lens is basically, you'll take a giant suck on a sour lemon before you opine on anything. But in interest of having pride in America, here's what the Idaho Freedom Foundation had to say about Thomas Paine. John Adams once observed that the real American Revolution was the radical change in the principles, opinions, sentiments, and affection of the people. This revolutionary character, which cherishes liberty above all else, is America's distinctive feature. So in this regard, few men contributed more to the formation of that character than Thomas Paine. That's, some people, well, he's just a bigot, says you, but learning a little bit more about him, you learn that he was the pamphleteer of the Revolution. Paine's writings, both before and during the revolutionary struggle, aroused the patriotic zeal necessary to secure our independence. And by the way, one of the things that was in abundance at that time was something called moral clarity. We seem to struggle with that just a bit. Common Sense, Paine's most influential pamphlet, published in 1776, outlined in rousing prose not just the practical reasons for a separation from Great Britain, but the fundamental principle that a government of our own is our natural right. Upon publication, the pamphlet quickly spread through the taverns and meeting houses of the fledgling republic, selling over 100,000 copies in its first 3 months. And it's considered it's widely considered one of the best-selling books in American history. So yeah, there's good reason to be proud of Thomas Paine. And following that success, he traveled with the Continental Army during Washington's disastrous rout from Long Island. Alarmed by the collapsing morale of the Patriot forces, he penned another series of pamphlets titled The American Crisis. And this is where we get that famous line, "These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country. But he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman." Kind of nice to get some context on that from Thomas Paine. Today, the Idaho Freedom Foundation tells us we face a new crisis in America that threatens to destroy what remains of our constitutional system of government, and with it, our most sacred liberties. Paine's writings are a potent reminder that the common sense opinion in defense of government by consent and natural rights of man should always be held in higher esteem than the decrees of experts. In this battle to preserve our rightful inheritance as freemen, there is no place for sunshine patriots. So the proper role of government is not to ensure that we all have the proper attitudes towards this group and whatever part of the rainbow flag is being represented. The proper role of government is to defend the God-given rights, the natural rights of each and every person, regardless of what subgroup you may want to lump them into. Equally, we are all supposed to be protected under the law. That is the purpose. That's the reason that proper government is called into existence. Somewhere along the line, even down to the local level, we're seeing cities and towns and areas that are losing sight of what government is supposed to do. It's not supposed to make us all think the proper thoughts. It's supposed to keep us free. And those freedoms, if you're a student of history, are predicated on self-control and the ability to govern yourself in so that you don't paint yourself into a corner of consequences from which you can't escape. Nonetheless, few thoughts there on how to be proud of Idaho, which we rightfully should be, because there are things that exist here that you will have a hard time finding elsewhere in this great country. We're kind of an island of freedom and traditional values in a nation that is rapidly losing those things from many, many places, particularly heavier populated areas. But at the same time, there's great risk in becoming prideful. So let's be proud of Idaho, but not prideful. I'm Brian Hyde. This is Nowhere to Hide.
All reporters are biased. The Idaho Press Club are biased. All media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot. That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
Dark money is influencing